Adenike Adeyemi was the epitome of wealth and class. The only daughter of Chief Bayo Adeyemi, a billionaire businessman, she lived a life of luxury in the heart of Lagos. From designer outfits to exotic vacations, Adenike had it all. Her friends, all from similar wealthy backgrounds, were her constant companions, moving from one lavish event to another. But beneath the surface of this glamorous life, Adenike yearned for something more, something real. She was tired of the pretense, the fake smiles, and the materialistic values that defined her world. Despite her immense privilege, she felt trapped, constantly surrounded by expectations that dictated her every move. Her parents, especially her mother, had a well-planned future for her, one that involved marrying into another wealthy family to maintain their social standing. On her 25th birthday, an extravagant gala was thrown in her honor, attended by the elite of Lagos society. The ballroom of the Adeyemi estate was adorned with crystal chandeliers, golden decor, and the finest cuisine money could buy. Yet, as Adenike stood in the center of it all, wearing a stunning designer gown, she felt empty. Later that night, she sat alone on the balcony, gazing at the city lights. Despite all her riches, she felt poorer than ever. Love was the one thing money couldn't buy, and she had never truly experienced it. The gentle hum of Lagos nightlife reached her ears, the distant honking of cars, the chatter of street vendors, the rhythm of a city that never slept. For once, she longed to be a part of that world, free from the suffocating expectations that had shaped her life. That night, Adenike made a bold decision. She slipped out of the estate, leaving behind the glittering party and the artificial conversations. Without notifying her chauffeur, she walked onto the bustling streets, feeling an unfamiliar thrill. She waved down a taxi and slid into the back seat. "Just drive," she said, her voice trembling slightly. The driver glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "You okay, miss?" "I'm fine," she replied, though she wasn't sure if that was true. The man nodded and pulled away from the estate. His name was Chuka Obi. He was tall with a strong build and carried himself with a quiet confidence. Unlike the men in her social circle, he didn't seem overly impressed by her presence. There was an authenticity about him that intrigued her. What started as a simple taxi ride turned into something more. Chuka took her to a small but cozy restaurant by the waterfront. It was a place unknown to the elite, frequented by regular people who shared stories over steaming plates of jollof rice and suya. Adenike had never experienced anything like it. She felt oddly comfortable, free from the scrutinizing eyes of high society. She and Chuka talked for hours about life, dreams, and what truly mattered. He leaned against the hood of the car, staring at the horizon. Driving taxis teaches you a lot. You see all kinds of people, those in a rush, those hiding from something, those searching for something they can't name. Adenike found herself wanting to know more about him. "And you? What are you searching for?" Chuka exhaled. "A future where I can build something that lasts." The following morning, Adenike woke up feeling lighter. Her unexpected escape had given her a taste of something different, something she craved more of. She couldn't stop thinking about the taxi driver, Chuka. There was something about his quiet confidence, his honesty, that drew her in. That day, instead of attending a scheduled luncheon with her mother's wealthy associates, Adenike slipped away again. She found herself standing at the same street corner where she had hailed Chuka's taxi the night before, half hoping to see him again. And then, as if fate had heard her, a familiar yellow cab pulled up. "You again," Chuka said, his lips curling into a smirk. "Running away from another party?" Adenike chuckled. "Something like that. Can we go back to the waterfront?" He didn't question her. He simply nodded and drove. As the car maneuvered through the city streets, Adenike took a deep breath, absorbing the energy of Lagos in a way she never had before. Street vendors shouting, children laughing, the aroma of roasted plantain drifting through the air. This was a side of life she had always been too sheltered to experience. When they reached the waterfront, she hesitated before speaking. "Thank you for bringing me here yesterday. I needed that." Chuka shrugged. "People need space to breathe sometimes. You just seem like you needed it more than most." They spoke at length. There was a quiet strength in his words that intrigued her. He wasn't just another taxi driver. He had dreams, just like her. As they sat together by the water, talking about life, Adenike realized something. This was the first time in a long time that someone saw her as more than just an heiress, and it terrified her. Over the next few weeks, Adenike and Chuka found themselves meeting more frequently. What had started as chance encounters soon became intentional. Every time she called, he was there, sometimes picking her up in his taxi, other times meeting her at the waterfront or a quiet cafe tucked away in a corner of Lagos. Each time, Adenike learned more about Chuka. He wasn't just a taxi driver. He had studied engineering at a university, but had put his dreams on hold to support his family. He spoke passionately about business ideas, about wanting to own a fleet of cars rather than just driving one. He had ambition, but unlike the men in Adenike's world, he didn't wear it as a badge of entitlement. One evening, as they sat on a bench overlooking the city skyline, Chuka turned to her. "You ever think about what you really want, Adenike? Not what your family wants or what your friends expect, just you?" The question startled her. She had spent so much of her life being told what she should want that she had never truly considered what her own desires were. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've spent my whole life following a script someone else wrote for me." Chuka smiled. "Maybe it's time to write your own." She looked at him, a realization dawning in her mind. He wasn't just showing her a new side of the city, he was showing her a new side of herself. A side that craved independence, that wanted to define her own future. But deep down, she knew that stepping into this world, Chuka's world, meant defying everything she had ever known. And that scared her. As she sat there, lost in thought, Chuka reached over and placed a reassuring hand over hers. "You don't have to figure it all out tonight," he said. "But when you're ready, the world is bigger than the one you were born into." Adenike squeezed his hand in return, knowing that with every step she took toward this new life, she was also walking away from the one she had always known. As the days turned into weeks, Adenike found herself spending more time with Chuka. Their meetings no longer felt like stolen moments. They became the highlight of her day. Chuka's world fascinated her, and she relished every opportunity to see life through his eyes. One afternoon, as they walked through a busy Lagos market, Adenike marveled at the vibrancy of it all. "I've never been to a place like this," she admitted, watching vendors negotiate prices and children weave between stalls. Chuka laughed. "I figured. You don't exactly seem like the type to bargain for fresh tomatoes." She rolled her eyes playfully. "Hey, I might surprise you." "All right," Chuka challenged, stopping by a vendor's stall. "Go ahead, let's see your bargaining skills." Adenike hesitated but took a deep breath. She pointed at a basket of oranges. "How much?" she asked. The vendor eyed her curiously before naming a price. Adenike glanced at Chuka, who merely folded his arms, waiting. After an awkward attempt at negotiation, resulting in her paying only slightly less than the original price, Chuka chuckled. "Not bad for a first-timer." They found a shaded spot to sit, sharing the oranges as they watched the market buzz with activity. Adenike sighed. "I feel so normal here. No cameras, no expectations, just life." Chuka studied her. "You don't have to go back to that world, you know? There are other ways to live." Adenike hesitated. She wasn't ready to give up her family, her home, but the thought of leaving this simplicity behind felt equally unbearable. Chuka took her hand. "You don't have to choose today. Just be here, with me." And in that moment, Adenike realized she was falling for him. The days following Adenike's deepening relationship with Chuka felt like a silent war. At first, she thought she could keep their love hidden, meeting him in quiet places where no one from her world would see. But Lagos was small, and the wealthy had sharp eyes. It wasn't long before the whispers began. Her closest friends began to pull away, each too polite to outright question her choices, but quick to drop passive-aggressive remarks. "You've been missing at brunch lately, Adenike," Zainab noted one afternoon at a high-end cafe. "I have been busy," said Adenike. "Busy with what exactly?" Adenike forced a smile. "Just handling some personal matters." Zainab exchanged a knowing look with the others. "I heard something interesting. Apparently someone saw you getting out of a taxi, not a private hire, an actual yellow taxi." She paused for dramatic effect. "With the driver?" Adenike's heart pounded, but she kept her face neutral. "And?" Zainab scoffed. "And you expect us to believe you're not throwing your life away?" Adenike stood abruptly. "I don't owe any of you an explanation." From that day forward, the invites stopped coming. The messages dwindled to silence. It was clear she had been quietly exiled from her social circle. At home, things grew even worse. One evening, her parents summoned her to the family's grand sitting room. Her father, Chief Bayo Adeyemi, sat at the head of the room, his face impassive, while her mother stood nearby, arms crossed. "You are embarrassing this family, Adenike," her mother snapped. "A taxi driver? Do you realize how people are talking? What they are saying about you?" Adenike straightened her shoulders. "I don't care what people say, Mother. I care about being happy." Her father sighed heavily. "You think happiness comes from love alone? Love does not pay bills. Love does not build empires. We have spent years grooming you for a future of security and success, and you throw it away for—" "What? A man who can barely provide for himself?" "He is not just a man, Father. He is ambitious, hard-working, and he sees me for who I truly am, not just an heiress." Her mother scoffed. "That is exactly the problem. He sees you as a trophy, an escape from his struggles. You're blinded by whatever fantasy he has sold you." Adenike shook her head. "You don't know him. You've never even met him." Her father's voice hardened. "And we will not meet him. This relationship ends now. If you continue seeing him, there will be consequences." Adenike's heart pounded. "What kind of consequences?" Her father leaned forward. "You will lose everything, Adenike. Your inheritance, your privileges, even this house. If you walk out of that door to be with him, you will no longer be our daughter." Adenike swallowed hard, her hands trembling. She had always known her family would react strongly, but she never expected an ultimatum this cruel. Was she really prepared to give up everything for love? Her mother's voice softened slightly. "Think carefully, my dear. You have a future here, a future full of wealth, stability, and comfort. Do you really want to trade that for uncertainty?" Adenike looked from her mother to her father. The people who had given her everything except the freedom to choose her own happiness. And in that moment, she knew. With a deep breath, she lifted her chin. "I choose love." Silence fell over the room. Her mother's face darkened, her father's expression remained unreadable. "Then go," he said coldly, "but do not come back." Tears stung Adenike's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Without another word, she turned and walked away, her heart heavy but resolute. She had made her choice, and she would live with it. Within days of their confrontation, her parents had tightened their control over her life. Her credit cards were frozen, invitations to high society events were rescinded, and her mother had begun introducing her to new suitors as if Chuka had never existed. The final blow came one evening when she returned home and found a young man in the living room. Her mother beamed as she introduced him. "Adenike, this is Femi Adigun. You remember him? His family owns the largest oil distribution company in Nigeria." Adenike clenched her fists. "What is this?" Femi grinned. "Just a casual dinner. Your mother invited me." Adenike turned to her mother, her voice shaking with anger. "You can't be serious." Her mother sighed, setting down her wine glass. "You have had your little rebellion, Adenike, but now it is time to return to reality." Adenike stormed upstairs, locking her door. She knew what was coming, and she was right. She started seeing Chuka in secret, slipping away when she could, meeting him in hidden corners of the city where no one from her world would think to look. "You sure about this?" Chuka asked one evening as they sat on the hood of his taxi, parked near the edge of the city where the skyline met the sea. "Because once you go down this road, there's no turning back." Adenike looked at him, her heart steady despite the storm brewing around her. "I've never been more sure of anything." Chuka nodded, but remained silent, staring out at the horizon. "I just don't want you to regret it. Love isn't enough if you lose everything." She took his hand. "But love is the only thing worth fighting for." The day Adenike left her family's estate was the day she lost everything she had ever known. She packed only what she needed, walked past the grand gates that had once symbolized her security. Chuka was waiting at the end of the long driveway, his taxi parked under the dim glow of the streetlights. As she approached, he stepped out, watching her with cautious eyes. "Are you sure about this?" he asked softly. Adenike nodded, swallowing back the lump in her throat. "I have nothing left here. They made their choice, and so did I." Without another word, Chuka opened the door for her, and she slid into the passenger seat. As he pulled away from the estate, she dared one last glance at the home she had known her entire life. But it no longer felt like home. She faced forward, determined not to look back. He gave her a reassuring smile. "You're not alone, Adenike. We'll figure this out together." Her phone buzzed incessantly. Calls from her mother, texts from her father, messages filled with disappointment, threats, pleas. But she ignored them all. There was no turning back. For the first few days, reality felt like a dream. Waking up in a small apartment instead of a sprawling mansion, taking simple meals instead of extravagant breakfasts prepared by a chef, it was an adjustment. But with Chuka by her side, it felt right. Yet, as the days passed, the weight of her choices began to settle in. She had no income, no backup plan. Her entire life had been funded by her family's wealth, and now she had to build from nothing. Determined to stand on her own, she started looking for work. After several failed attempts, where her last name either opened too many doors or closed them entirely, she found an opportunity at a community outreach center. The pay was modest, but for the first time in her life, she was working for something meaningful. Chuka watched her navigate her new life with admiration. "You're stronger than you think," he told her one evening as they sat together after dinner. Adenike smiled, but doubt lingered in her heart. Was love really enough? Could she truly build a new life from the ground up? And then, one evening, everything changed. Chuka came home with a look she had never seen before, one of determination, but also secrecy. "There's something I need to tell you," he said. Adenike's heart pounded. "What is it?" Chuka took a deep breath. "I haven't been completely honest with you." Adenike felt her pulse quicken as she searched Chuka's face. His usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by something unreadable. She sat up, bracing herself for whatever revelation was about to come. "I didn't want to lie to you," Chuka began, his voice steady yet laced with emotion. "But I needed you to love me for me." Adenike's brows furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Silence filled the room as Adenike processed his words. She opened her mouth, then closed it, confusion swimming in her eyes. "What?" Chuka hesitated before answering, his gaze fixed on the city skyline. "Adenike, I need to tell you something," he said. "I'm not just a taxi driver. I'm the only son of Chief Obinna Obi, the founder and owner of Eastern Star Transport, the largest transport company in southeastern Nigeria." Adenike blinked in shock. "Wait, what?" Chuka exhaled deeply. "I've always loved driving. My father built his empire from the ground up, and he made sure I learned every aspect of the business, from the bottom to the top. When I moved to Lagos, it wasn't just to expand the business. It was to understand my workers, to see the world through their eyes, and to stay grounded." Adenike sat still, processing his words. She had fought so hard for love, believing she was choosing a simple life over wealth, only to discover that Chuka was not just ambitious. He was already a part of the world she had left behind. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked finally. "Because I needed to know if you'd love me for me. Not for my name, not for my wealth," he admitted. "I needed something real." Chuka sighed. "Because I didn't want my wealth to be the reason you stayed. I needed to know that you chose me for who I am, not for what I have." Tears welled in Adenike's eyes, not of anger, but of overwhelming emotion. She had fought against her family, against society's expectations, believing she was choosing love over wealth. And now, she realized that Chuka had been protecting her from the very thing she had been trying to escape, being valued for material things instead of true connection. She shook her head in disbelief, then laughed, a soft, breathy sound of relief. "I can't believe this." Chuka took her hands. "I love you, Adenike. I loved you when you were the daughter of a billionaire, and I love you now, as a woman who chose love over comfort. Nothing changes that." Adenike wiped her eyes and met his gaze, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. "I love you too, Chuka, and not for your wealth, but for your heart." News of Chuka's true identity spread quickly, shaking both Adenike's social circle and her family. The daughter of Chief Bayo Adeyemi had fallen in love with the heir to a transport empire. The very people who had scorned her for dating a taxi driver were now scrambling to re-establish connections. Her parents, now seeing Chuka in a different light, requested a meeting. At the Adeyemi estate, Chief Bayo regarded Chuka with newfound respect. "You deceived us," he said, though his voice held no real anger. Chuka met his gaze steadily. "I never lied. I only withheld the truth until the right time." Adenike's mother, who had once disapproved of their relationship, softened. "You were willing to let everything go for love?" she asked her daughter. Adenike smiled. "Yes, and I would do it again." Her father nodded slowly. "Then you have my blessing." With her family reconciled and their love stronger than ever, Adenike and Chuka set their sights on the future. Adenike, with her business acumen and vast network, joined forces with Chuka to take Eastern Star Transport to new heights. One evening, as they sat on their balcony overlooking the city, Adenike turned to him. "I want to be part of this expansion, Chuka. Let's build something even greater. Together." He grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that." Under their joint leadership, Eastern Star Transport spread beyond the southeastern Lagos, launching new branches across Nigeria and eventually into other West African nations. They focused on innovation, introducing tech-driven transport solutions, driver welfare programs, and premium services for clients. Despite their growing success, Chuka never stopped driving. "It keeps me connected to the people," he would tell her, smiling as he held the steering wheel. With every milestone they achieved, Adenike and Chuka proved that love transcends societal boundaries. The same people who had once ridiculed them now admired them, recognizing their journey as one of resilience and purpose. One evening, as they attended a charity gala, this time as honored guests, Adenike's old friends approached her. Zainab, once skeptical of her choices, smiled warmly. "I was wrong about you, Adenike. You built something real, something inspiring." Adenike simply smiled. She had long since let go of the need for validation from her old circle. She had found everything she needed in Chuka and the life they had built together. That night, as they danced under the shimmering chandeliers, Chuka leaned in and whispered, "Are you happy?" Adenike rested her head against his chest, her heart swelling with love, more than I ever thought possible. Their love story had been unconventional, full of struggles and sacrifices, but in the end, it had been worth it. They had built a life together, not defined by status, but by love, ambition, and the unwavering belief in each other. As they stepped out into the cool Lagos night, hand in hand, Adenike knew that their journey was far from over. They had so much more to achieve, but no matter what the future held, they would face it together. The end. Hello, beautiful people. Thank you so much for your incredible support. Your time, your likes, your comments, and your shares mean the world to me. Every interaction fuels my passion for storytelling and keeps this journey alive. But to keep bringing you more amazing stories, I need your continued support. Please like, share, and drop your wonderful comments below. They encourage me more than you know. And most importantly, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your subscription is what truly helps this channel grow and keeps the stories coming. Thank you so much for being part of this journey. I appreciate you.